Hi, I am Michelle Vaughn, and I welcome you to the very first official episode of the Observation Room. I'm genuinely excited to have you here because this is more than just the beginning of a podcast for me. It's the beginning of a new home for the work, ideas, stories, questions, and conversations that I have been starting and sharing in different various places all over the internet for years. Let's be honest, for 2 decades. So before I tell you what I have built, I want to tell you about this microphone. Okay. This microphone belonged to my son Dylan, and I have newer equipment now. I have other microphones I could have used, but this is the one that I want in front of me for the first episode and hopefully the last. It feels right to begin this chapter with something of his right in front of me, front and center. Dylan is the reason that I understand that love does not simply disappear. It changes form over time, and it becomes a part of what we carry and what we create, and a part of how we decide to use the life that remains in our hands. So today, as I begin something new, his microphone is here. And it just feels right. Now, whether you have known me for years, worked with me, or followed me through mortgages and business, or Facebook stories, or Facebook long form posts, or short videos, or long videos, or books that I've written, leadership conversations, or one of the many other places that I've shown up, I'm glad you found your way into this room. If this is the very first time you have met me, I'm so glad you're here too. The name of this podcast is The Observation Room because observation has always been a large part of how I move throughout the world. I notice things. I notice what people say. I notice what they avoid saying. I notice when the problem somebody brings me is not really the real problem. I notice patterns. I notice inconsistencies, and I notice the moment someone knows the answer to their own question but has been not really given themselves the permission to say it out loud. I notice what makes people come alive. I notice what drains them. I notice what happens in a room when one person finally tells the truth. And then I usually want to talk about it, like a lot. So if you've been on the other end of that and we talk today or we don't talk today, I really do appreciate you giving me your ear. So that's really what this room is for, though. It's a place where we can slow down. We can slow down long enough to look at something again. Because sometimes the facts of a situation don't really need to change. Most times, what changes is the perspective that we bring to those facts. Brings us back to business. A business problem can look like a marketing problem until somebody asks a better question and realizes it is actually a clarity problem. A money decision can look completely mathematical until you recognize how much fear and identity and security and pride or family history is sitting underneath that. A relationship can look like a communication problem, but when the deeper issue is that someone does not feel safe enough to tell the truth, that's the real root of the problem. A person can look unfocused from the outside while knowing deep down that all the things they care about are connected in one central thread. I know most of these personally, but I know that last one really personally. People have told me for years that I do a lot of things differently. People have lovingly called me a robot. Some people have said, Michelle, you are everywhere. Some people have looked at mortgages, consulting, writing, speaking, books, homeownership, business strategy, leadership, my creativity, DeWeeWoo, the Dylan Foundation, the personal stories I share all over social media, and wondered how of it all could it possibly fit together. And I understand why it can look that disconnected from the outside. For a long time, I thought I had to keep explaining it. And I tried and I tried. I thought I needed a perfect sentence that would make everybody understand why somebody who could sit with a family and explain a complicated mortgage could also walk into a business and see what's broken in the sales process or even the human part of it. What was the human process part of missing from the process? Why somebody who could talk about leadership and positioning could also write a book about love and identity and home and legacy, or something she noticed during an ordinary walk. Why somebody could care deeply about a practical information and still care just as deeply about meaning, beauty, creativity, and all the things that cannot always be neatly placed into a spreadsheet. In my mind, those things have never been separate. The same ability that had helped me take a complicated mortgage situation and make it understandable is the ability I use when I listen to a business owner, or I look at a sales team, or I look at an operations process, or I think about money, or I observe a relationship, or I notice something happening in everyday life. I look for the pattern. I try to find the real issue underneath the obvious ones. And then I try to make it clear enough that somebody can actually do something with it. And that's the connection. The subject might change, but the way I see things don't. That doesn't change. And one of the most important things that I have learned is that sometimes clarity does not come from forcing you into a smaller box. Sometimes clarity comes from finally understanding the thread that connects everything that you have been carrying. Now, there's a lot of advice in the world about picking one lane. And there are times when that advice is really useful and it's really smart. Businesses really do need clear offers. Customers need to understand what you do, and people need a clear starting point. But choosing a clear starting point is different from pretending that you're only one thing. Human beings are not just one thing. Oh, the beauty, the complexity of a human is something I love studying. We have work lives, home lives, financial lives, creative lives, relationship, histories, responsibilities, dreams, contradictions, and questions that we haven't even dared to ask yet. All of those things affect one another, whether we acknowledge it or not. The leader who is having trouble making a decision at work may also be exhausted by caring from too much at home. Or the family trying to buy a house may be making financial decisions through the lens of everything they experienced growing up. The person building a business may think they need a better strategy when they actually need to trust their own point of view. The person who appears successful may still be asking whether the life they have built feels like the life they truly want. Life does not arrive divided into clean little categories. So this podcast will not pretend that it does. For years, different parts of my work lived in different places. Mortgage information, or Mortgage Michelle, was in one place. Business and leadership conversations was somewhere else. Personal stories were all over social media. My books live on Amazon. My creative projects had their homes. Dylan's legacy lives through the Dylan Foundation and DeWeeWoo and my writing and my memories and the choices that we made about what to build next. There were people who have only known one version of me and had no idea the other versions even existed. Someone might know me from mortgages and never knew that I wrote a book. Someone might follow my business work and never see the conversations about home or money or identity or legacy. Someone might know the personal stories, but not understand that I also walk into companies, I look from the outside, I name a real issue, and I give leaders a real path forward. And then there was social media. Man, social media helped many of us find one another. 10 times out of 10, you found me from social media. And I am so grateful for that. I really am. Truly, I've built real relationships through the internet. I've met clients and friends and collaborators and people whose stories have stayed with me for years, who live with me daily. I love the way one honest post can reach somebody at the exact moment they need it. Many people will DM me, God, it's like you knew what God knew I needed to hear this today. I love the way a conversation can begin between ordinary people who have never met in an ordinary life. But over time, I became less comfortable with the idea that the algorithm could decide whether or not people who had chose to follow me would ever see what I had shared. So I became a little less interested in creating the thoughtful work and watching it disappear within hours because it was not loud enough or controversial enough or frequent enough or designed to keep people scrolling. It wasn't clickbait. It wasn't an emotional up turmoil for you. In fact, I wanted to do the exact opposite. I wanted to regulate your nervous system and help you teach that part. I did not want our entire relationship to be in a rented space. I did not want to spend my life building a body of work that could become difficult to find every time a platform changed its rules. And I don't want people to have to chase different pieces of me across the internet. So I pulled back a little while. I've been meaning to do this for years. I started building one connected home for Michelle Vaughn Co. And the phrase one home is really important. One home doesn't mean one room. A house can have many rooms and still be one house. There can be room for business and leadership. There can be a home for mortgages and money and the financial choices that shape our everyday lives. There can be a room for legacy and generosity, books and creativity, the work that grows from love. There can be a room for personal observations and relationships and identity, change, and the things we simply learn by living. Those rooms do not have to compete with each other. They belong to the same home because they come from the same point of view. It's really why I rebranded all of my companies under the one umbrella of Michelle Vaughn Co. It's just easier for it to have one home. So that realization changed the way I thought about my work. I didn't need to erase parts of myself to become clear. I had to build the structure that would help other people understand how to enter it. And that's what Michelle Vaughn Co. has become. It's the one home for the things I write, I teach, I notice, and I build across businesses, home, money, creativity, legacy, and the conversations that don't always fit neatly into one category. The platform I chose to build this home in is Beehive, and I chose it because it gave me a way to bring the website, my newsletters, archive, my membership, my podcast, and my new community closer together. The technology matters because it supports the experience. But the technology is not the heart of the story. The heart of the story is connection. I wanted somebody to be able to hear a podcast episode or read a newsletter, find a useful resource, explore idea more deeply, or enter a conversation without feeling as though they had been sent to 5 disconnected worlds. Social media will still be a part of how we find each other. It'll be the door. LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and other places I might show up. They'll just simply open the door. But Michelle Vaughn Co. is the home where the work will fully live now. And that matters to me because I'm trying to build something really worth returning to. I want the person who finds one useful idea today to be able to come back in 6 months from now and find it again. I want the letters to feel like correspondence rather than content being thrown into a feed. I already have thousands of subscribers that get my monthly newsletter, and most of the people respond, it feels like a friend writing to me. I want the website to hold a real body of work. And I want the podcast to give us enough room to explore an idea instead of reducing everything to a few seconds. It's hard to get it in those reels in the 90 seconds that they want. I want the community to give people somewhere to continue the conversation when an episode or a letter opens up something really that deserves more thought, more conversation, more collaboration, more connection. And that brings me to why I wanted a podcast. I've always been a talker. Anybody who knows me personally is probably laughing right now because this is not new information. I think out loud. I tell stories. I can begin with one sentence, remember a detail in the middle, follow that detail for a minute or two, and then still somehow make my way back to my original point. It's a gift, usually. Sometimes something about spoken conversation that allows people to experience an idea differently. Writing gives me precision. I've always been good at writing. It lets me sit with a sentence and choose the right word and build an idea carefully. Speaking gives me movement, gives me energy. You can hear where I pause. You can hear when something makes me laugh. You can hear when a subject matters to me. You can see the expression on my face when I say something that I know may challenge people. I'm really good at challenging people. You can feel the difference between a sentence that sounds good and a sentence that I actually mean. Now, video adds another layer because you're not only listening to the words, you are watching a human being think, respond, and remember that sometimes discovering what she believes while she's saying it. And I've already done that a couple times here. That's the kind of room I want this to be. Some episodes will be carefully planned. Some will begin with a question I have been carrying. Some may come from a conversation or a business problem or a financial decision or something that happened in the world or something small I noticed during an ordinary day. Some episodes will be just me. Other episodes will bring thoughtful people into the room, some experts, some leaders and builders. I love a builder, creatives, and people whose perspective can help all of us see something in the world that we couldn't see alone. I'm interested in the people who actually have lived what they're talking about. I want conversations with substance. I want to know how someone thinks and what changed their mind and what they learned the hard way and what are they building? What do they see the rest of us might be missing? I want to talk about the sales process with someone who understands that selling is really just about listening and clarity and trusting and helping the other person make a really good decision for themselves. I want to talk about leadership with people who understand that a title does not automatically make you a leader. I want to talk about money in a way that respects numbers and the human being making the decision. I want to talk about home ownership without pretending that buying a house is simply a transaction, because literally you become a part of those people's lives. I want to talk about creativity and identity and relationships and legacy, technology, and the way the world is changing around us. Economics, finance, politics, even if I have to. Sometimes I may simply come here and tell you what I've been noticing. The subjects may change, but the central thread will remain perspective and observation. I believe perspective changes what becomes possible. Most of the time, people don't need another piece of information. They have more information than you could even possibly get from one generation. This generation is so flooded, more than any before has ever had. We can search for an answer within seconds. We can ask AI to organize it, explain it, summarize it, or show us 10 different ways to approach it. And yet people still feel completely stuck. That is because the information and clarity are not always the same thing. You know every step and still avoid the very first one. You can understand numbers and still feel afraid. You can have a plan and know that something about it is still wrong. You can be surrounded by advice while feeling increasingly disconnected from your own judgment. Sometimes the thing that changes everything is just a better question. What is actually happening here? What am I pretending not to know? What problem am I actually solving? Is this the real problem? What would I choose if I were not trying to prove anything to anyone else? What part of this decision actually belongs to me? What part belongs to someone else's expectations? Is this giving me energy or is it draining me? Does this come from my beliefs or the beliefs of what I was taught? What am I continuing because I just simply spent so much time doing it already? What would become possible if I looked at the situation from a different perspective? Those are the observation room questions. They don't always produce an immediate, comfortable answer. They create enough space for the truth to become visible. And once you can see what is actually happening, you can make a cleaner decision. Every detail. They remember every decision. They understand why each compromise was made. And all of that knowledge can make it difficult to see the simple thing that is obvious from the outside. The same thing happens in our personal lives. We become accustomed to our own patterns. We know the explanation for everything, right? We know why we stayed, why we waited, why we said yes, why we avoided the conversation, and why we keep believing that next month something will somehow be different. Then somebody asks one honest question and suddenly the whole picture moves. This podcast is built around that possibility. I'm not here because I believe I have every answer. I am here because I know the value of looking carefully, thinking honestly, and being willing to say what I see. I bring experience, I bring practical knowledge, and I bring warmth. But I also bring the kind of directness that may occasionally make you pause the episode and stare at the wall for a minute. And that is okay. I do it to myself a lot. Sometimes a useful conversation comforts us. Sometimes it confirms something we already know. Sometimes it interrupts a story we've been telling ourselves for years. All of them can be valuable. But I also want this to be a human space. Everything does not need to become a lesson immediately. I tell myself this sometimes. We are allowed to laugh and be uncertain. We're allowed to change our minds when we learn something new. We're allowed to care deeply about serious things and still enjoy beautiful, ordinary moments. You're allowed to be accomplished and still need support. You're allowed to build something meaningful without turning every private moment of our lives into public content. That last part matters a lot to me now. There's a difference between honesty and exposure. Took me a long time to learn that lesson. There's a difference between sharing something because it might create connection and sharing it because the internet has taught us that pain performs well. I want to be honest here. I also want to honor the parts of my life that deserve privacy and tenderness and time before they're turned into a language. You can expect me to tell the truth as I understand it. You can also expect me to respect the fact that every truth does not belong to everyone. Now, let me give you a simple map of what I have built because you're going to hear these names again. So the observation room is this podcast. Each week, I will bring you a meaningful observation, a question, a story, or a conversation that gives us a chance to look at something more carefully. Now, the observation is the monthly newsletter. It goes out on the 2nd of each month and brings the wider world of Michelle Vaughn Co together. Life, work, money, identity, relationships, creativity, change, and the things I'm learning as I live them. Now, this one has been going out for over a year, and I think over 3,000 of you are already subscribed, and most of you respond that you feel like it's just a friend talking to you. But I've added 3 additional free newsletters that people can choose based on what they want more of. So the advisory is for business, for leadership, for sales and positioning, for making clear decisions, the real issues underneath what might look like a surface problem. This is for your realtors, your loan officers, your business owners, your CEOs, or someone looking to advance in their career. Now, the household is the third newsletter, but the second free one. And it's for mortgages, homeownership, credit, debt, consumer finance, practical money decisions that shape a household, how to be a homeowner, how to live in this world today. Now, the foundation is where I share all things Dylan, the remembrance, the meaningful work, the impact, the woo-woo products, everything that's going on with the foundation. Now, you don't have to want every subject. You can only choose one. The purpose of that is building a home with different rooms. The observation keeps us connected to a larger body of work, and then you can choose the additional doors that fit your life. There's also a community connected to each of those works. So there are free shared spaces and member spaces for people who want deeper discussions and live workshops, like love notes from me and a closer relationship for what we are actually building. Now, I'm not going to turn this episode into a tour of every single page and feature the channel, every button and every membership level, but you can explore those at your own pace. But I have plenty of free resources that are out there for homeowners, for business leaders. You can explore those things at your own pace. What matters today is that everything is finally connected. The work has a home. The people who connect with it have a clear way to stay. And I have enough room to create without pretending every idea belongs in the same format. Some ideas need 30-second video, some need a written letter, some need a worksheet or a practical resource, some need a full podcast conversation. Some need to be discussed live with people who can ask questions and bring their own experiences into the room. Some ideas might be a quick post inside the community where you can share and comment and laugh and message each other. Some ideas need time before they become anything at all. The home gives each idea somewhere appropriate to live. And that is what I hope this episode gives you permission to consider for your own life. Maybe you've been trying to force yourself into one room because you thought clarity required you to abandon the rest of the house. Maybe you have interests that other people don't understand. Maybe your work history looks disconnected on paper, but you can feel the common thread. Maybe you have been told to choose between being practical and being creative, ambitious and peaceful, or strong and tender and successful and supported. You can be both in all of those things. Maybe you've spent years presenting different versions of yourself in different places and beginning to wonder what it would feel like to let all of those versions belong to one whole person. You probably don't need to become smaller. Well, I know you don't need to become smaller. You probably just need a better structure. You might need language that helps people understand the connection. You need clearer doors. You may need to decide which part comes first without treating the other parts as though they do not matter. Now, there is a difference between focus and fragmentation. Focus helps you decide where your attention belongs right now. That's so important. It's how you build things. Fragmentation makes you believe certain parts of yourself are unacceptable because they complicate the story. I choose focusing. I choose wholeness. Michelle Vaughn Co. can have a clear front door without being a one-room house. And so can life. That's Taco. That may be the most important observation in this first episode. You are allowed to build a life large enough to hold what is true about you. Structure might take time. You might need to revise it. You might build a room and later realize it doesn't belong there anymore. It belongs somewhere else. It's not a bad room. It's just not the room that helps you complete it. You might discover that something you thought was central was actually just a season. You might find a thread that you couldn't see before. That is part of the work that I do. Now, this version of Michelle Vaughn Co. did not arrive in one perfect moment. Those of you who've been following me, you know. It came from years of working and building and loving and losing and changing and observing and deciding what deserved to come forward with me. It came from understanding that my life cannot be reduced to one professional title. It came from knowing that the work I do in business and the way I think about home and money and the stories I write and the things I build in Dylan's honor and being Destin's mother and the conversations I want to have are all connected by the way I see. It came from being willing to stop asking whether every person would understand every room. They don't have to. The right people will understand how to enter. And that's why I'm opening the doors now. Now, here's my promise to you as we begin. Each episode will start with something worth explaining. We will move through each story and situation and example or conversation that gives the idea somewhere real to live. And I will leave you something that you can carry into your own life or your own work. A clearer question, a different way to see the problem, a practical next step, maybe a little bit, simply a little more light. When a subject deserves more, there might be a companion letter that goes with it, a resource or a LinkedIn conversation, or a short video or a deeper discussion inside the community. The podcast is where the conversation will begin, and the rest of the ecosystem just gives it somewhere to continue. Now, if this is your first time that you have met me, here is what you can expect from me. You can expect honest observations, practical perspective. You can expect warmth without pretending everything is easy. You can expect business and leadership conversations and naming the real issues. You can expect home and money conversations that help people make clear decisions. You can expect stories about love and identity and creativity and legacy and what we choose to build with what life leaves us in our hands. You can expect me to laugh or cry, tell a story longer than I had planned, or notice a side detail and occasionally say exactly what everybody else was thinking but didn't know how to say or was too afraid to say it out loud. You can expect me to care about whether the idea is useful after the episode ends. Most of all, you can expect me to show up as myself. So, this is the beginning. The podcast will be here every week. The letters will meet you in your inbox. The website will hold the full body of work. It'll be the central hub that you can just save that. But the community will give people who want more conversation a place to come inside. You can visit .co and subscribe to the observation and choose which additional letters that you would like that'll fit more into your life. So if you want to learn, build, or understand more clearly. However, if you found your way here, I hope this becomes a place that helps you look again and see something that you could not see before. I hope it reminds you that clarity does not always require you to cut every part of yourself out that somebody else finds difficult to categorize. Sometimes clarity is the moment you finally see the connection. Sometimes it's the answer. Sometimes the answer is not choosing one room. Sometimes the answer is building one home. I believe perspective changes everything. And I believe that when one person carries a little bit more light, they can share it with someone else. One candle can light another without losing any of its flame. That's what I want to build here. More clarity, more warmth, more useful conversation, more room ideas that deserve more than a few seconds, and more light moving from one person to the next. Thank you for being here for the first episode of The Observation Room. I am your host, Michelle Vaughn, and welcome to Inside the Room.